Hour number two of our program, and I'm trying to do something a little unique. I'm trying to run a few minutes of it live on Facebook as well. I will admit to this, though, when I'm doing the Facebook thing and I can see myself on camera, it's a little disconcerting. It's not the same as doing the show. I realize there are cameras here while I'm doing the show on a live basis, but they're not live cameras. They're for YouTube videos that I post later in the program. So when I actually go live and I can see myself on camera and people are writing me notes and sending me questions, it does get, I've got to get used to this. It gets in the way of the thinking process. Not that I usually have trouble thinking, um, doing it all day long, right? It's just one of those things we naturally do. You may think that that's not at all true. That, wives will say, I'll ask my husband what he's thinking, and he'll say, nothing. And I had a woman tell me one time, and she said, with my husband, that's true. That's not true. You're always thinking about something when you're conscious. It's, and gosh, when you're sleeping and you're dreaming, some of the things you're thinking about there, you don't know where they come from. I tend to be sitting around the house during the day, and I'm usually thinking, all right, I'm going to watch this next, or I'm going to eat this, or I'd like to call out and order pizza. And then when I'm at work, I'm thinking about all these big, weighty things that, get in our way and that we do throughout the course of a day. But we are thinking. The thing is, there are some animals, I don't think that they really think clearly. And we're a big agricultural area. Everyone understands that. You drive down through the South Hills and you see cattle everywhere. You drive to the east, you see cattle. You drive to the west, you see cattle. People have pigs and sheep. And a lot of people are raising chickens. And I used to work in a place, a part of the country, where if you went 500 feet, there was another chicken house. And people were raising chickens in the hundreds of thousands in some of these chicken barns along these back roads. And there were processing plants left and right. So I'm familiar with agriculture being such a big part of the lives of many people that I interact with on a daily basis. I came across this at the Wall Street Journal today. Headline is, Making Hens Cage Free. It says, you'll shell out for eggs. Now, I don't know a lot about chicken psychology, but I've been around chickens. In fact, I had an uncle who used to raise turkeys a long, long ago. He was raising turkeys on a farm in western New York State. And I remember going there to visit when I was a kid, and somebody said to me at the time, they said, don't get too close. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, if you bend over and they see something shiny like your eyes, they'll try to peck at those. Oh, I don't know that I want a turkey taking out my eyes. That's just, and so now I don't have any qualms about eating them on Thanksgiving or Christmas, because if that's the way they're going to be with me, I'll sit down and make sure that I give it back to them in spades. But this is a story about chickens, and it's a vote coming up in the state of Massachusetts, sometimes known as the People's Republic. A writer named Jason Lusk says this: there are more egg-laying chickens in the U.S. than there are people. Gosh, I'm not at all surprised about that. Until recently, almost all of those hens have lived in so-called battery cages. And those cages provide each chicken with a floor space, the writer says, smaller than like a sheet of paper, like the one that I'm holding here. And that means chickens can't move around a lot while they're in those cages. It says a referendum in Massachusetts. Now, there may be more chickens than people in the United States. There are more liberals in Massachusetts probably than there are anywhere else. Okay, California. Okay, New York. But aside from that, because Massachusetts, the writer says, produces only a tiny fraction of eggs in the U.S., such a law would appear to have little effect on consumers outside the state. However, the provision would also ban the sale of eggs coming from battery cage systems, meaning that out-of-state suppliers will be forced to comply. So if you're raising chickens in, I don't know, North Carolina, but you'd like to sell your eggs in Massachusetts, then the difficulty you're going to have is you've got to comply, and you cannot have battery cages. You'll have to have your chickens running all over, God's green acres. Did you see the story the other day from here in Idaho about the woman in northern Idaho? She has a chicken that's her service animal. I don't know how that works. What do you do? Put a leash on it and it walks you down the street, and if it sees traffic coming along and you can't see it, it starts belting out a little cackling there, and then that's your warning. When I lived in Vermont, we would walk outside work, and if we wanted to walk across the highway to get a bite to eat, when the light changed red and you would cross, there was a sound of a bird going chirp, 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 and that was, I assume, because the visually impaired happened to be in the area, and it was a way to protect them. And so when they heard the chirping, they knew they could cross the street. Well, that's contingent on the driver stopping for the red light. And here in Idaho, sometimes I saw this happen yesterday. Someone went roaring through an intersection, and if I'd been a couple of seconds faster, I probably would have had a enjoyable collision with them. Enjoyable from the sense that they'd have to buy me a new Jeep today if that had happened. That is, if I walked away from it, which I'm not so sure. Here's the thing about these chickens in these cages. And when everybody out there says it's cruel and it's terrible and we shouldn't be, I heard someone say, well, it's inhuman. Well, of course it is. They're chickens. They're not human beings. That's why it's inhuman. Yes, but they can't move anywhere and they're so tightly confined. And what do you think a chicken thinks about during the course of a day? Yeah, I'm going to guess a chicken has a brain about the size of a pea, and maybe it's not even that big. I mean, a chicken's got a really tiny brain in its noggin. So here's what a chicken, I think, if the chicken could think in English, because you understand, if you go to France, the French, they think in French, the Germans think in German, the Finns think in Finnish. Is it called Finnish? The Indians think in Hindu, the Russians think in Russian. So a chicken obviously thinks in chicken, but since a chicken doesn't have language, it just goes cluck, cluck, cluck. That's what the chicken thinks in. But if we could translate that into English, while the chicken is actually sitting in that cage and supposedly confined and can't go anywhere, here's what the chicken would think if it was thinking in English. Food. Food, 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 food. Food. Food, food, food. Food. Food, 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 food. Sleep. Sleep, 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 sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. Sleep, 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 sleep. Poop. Poop, 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 poop. Poop. Ah. Food. Food, 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 food. Food. Food, food, food. Food, 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 food. Sleep. Sleep, 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 sleep. 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 Sleep, 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 sleep. Sleep, sleep. Poop. Ah. Pee. Ah. Sleep. Food. Sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. Food, 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 food. Poop, 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 poop. So we're telling you right now that we're going to be doing this because we'd like to protect all of the world's chickens, and that if we keep them in these cages, that somehow it's harmful to them, and I guess the chicken can't self-actualize. Is that the point? That if the chicken can't be... I don't think that a chicken ever is sitting there and thinking, aha, I cluck, therefore I am. No, it's not happening. You know, I do not believe that a chicken is aware that it is sitting in a tiny cage, and if you let it loose, the chicken is just thinking, run. Run, 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 run. Run, 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 run. Food. Food, 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 food. Poop, 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 poop. Pee, pee, pee. Sleep, sleep. Run, 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 run. And so you've got all of these folks out there who say, we have to do this. It's the right thing to do. And when you go buy the next carton of eggs and it costs you $15, well, there you go. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Coming up on 9:15, 61. We're cooling off so far today. That's not nice. You're up next. You're on the air.
Hey, how's it going? Do you remember when those idiots went after fishermen for fishing?
Yes.
I'm just totally amazed at what some of these people are thinking, but I don't know. I just really don't know.
I guess you can find them all at the salad bar over at Sizzler. They're all over there just chewing on the alfalfa sprouts, which sometimes can end up tarnished. Thank you much for the call. And they end up tarnished. And what you do is you end up getting a severe cramp afterward. And then the next day you're like the chicken. Poop, 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 poop. That's the result of being a vegetarian if you're doing that. The fact of the matter is fish is supposedly good for you, although the environmentalists now say we've dumped so many toxins in the water that, you should only have a couple of servings now and then. But they say the same thing. There was some kook at the United Nations some years ago. This woman, I forgot her name now, she came out with a report and said that we should, as human beings, we should be restricted. When they say restricted, that means that one world government, a globalist-controlled government run by Big Brother, that government should be telling us you get 2 servings of meat per week. And only 2. If you want 3, well, Kim Il-sung over here, or whatever his name is, or Kim Jong-un, I guess that is the current incarnation, he's our jailer. He's going to take care of you, and he'll ensure you have no meat. And then the same cranky woman at the United Nations said that we should outlaw the production of alcohol. Now, there are people who believe that, and in some countries of the world, you can still have your hands or head chopped off if you're actually producing it or consuming it. We call those third world backward countries filled with illiterates who don't know what a shower is. But this is my point that I'm trying to make, is that she said we should eliminate alcohol production because that will save the grain that could feed the planet. And if we only have 2 servings, because they'd like to eliminate the meat altogether, but they have to start with limiting you to 2 servings because then the grain doesn't go to feed the cattle. And then the argument among all these people is, well, okay, the argument that they're going to try to make and they're going to try to share with you is we'll have all the grain and food we need to feed the world. Your diet will be really boring, and yet we'll make sure that we can share all around the world. I heard yesterday a commercial on TV. It's one of these doom and gloom. Speaking of chickens, Henny Penny, the sky is falling commercials, and the commercial said, by 2050 the world will not be able to feed itself. Well, they said that in 1750. They said that about 1850. They said that about 1950. Malthus, was that his name? Malthusian prophecy said it would happen by the late 1960s. It did not happen. Then they said, well, it'll happen in the 70s. Didn't happen. And then it'll happen by the late 80s. Didn't happen. Of course, they also said we wouldn't have polar ice caps. And they're still there. And all the polar bears will be dead. They're still there. I wonder what polar bear steak would taste like. Might be a little tough, but I'm sure that you could get through it with quite a bit of tenderizer and some A1. We have people out there who keep telling us all these things, and every time they tell us this, we find some way to do it better, and we get it done. But we do that through innovation and not through control by the United Nations or control by Washington. We do it because there are people out there who have an idea, and a few are still allowed to go ahead and bring that idea to market. Not quite so much as it used to be because of regulation and the like. But if we would allow human ingenuity to take over, it has served us well for the last several thousand years. We may as well let it continue to do that. So I don't understand all of this, but keep in mind, next time you go out for some eggs in the morning at your local diner and the waitress comes by and drops a tab on you and your 2 eggs over easy and your slice of ham and your toast cost you, $18.93, you'll know who to blame. It'll be those voters in Massachusetts who decided that chickens had more rights than probably most people do in this world any longer. I wonder if chickens do think, though, and they are cognizant of their situation, if they'll have to be regulated as well. And maybe they'll get the same rights in courts. There are some wackos on the left who already say that we need to give them, the animals, the same rights in court. I'm reminded of the old cartoon from The Far Side where there's an alligator sitting in the witness box and he's shouting back at the prosecutor. He says, of course I did it in cold blood. I'm a reptile. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. I have a short break coming up. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 63. Got to mention a story that comes out of Facebook, California. Facebook, California is not a town, but that's where it's located. And it appears that Facebook is now saying it's sorry for censoring conservatives. That's on the way this morning on KLIX. I have mentioned the name Rob Bluey on the air before. He spells that B-L-U-E-Y, Blue with a Y on the end, Rob Bluey. Rob is somebody I've known now for, almost 10 years. I met him when he was a young reporter working at Red State, and he did a story on me, and he got a photograph of me sitting on my bicycle with my bicycle helmet outside the U.S. Capitol, and we really annoyed some congressmen at the time. I'd gone to Washington when gasoline prices were well over $4 an hour, and I was delivering petitions arguing that we should be doing more offshore drilling and that we should be doing more fracking in this country to reduce the burden on the American people. And Rob did the story, and I got to talk to him that day in the cloakroom of the House of Representatives, and he told me he was from Utica, New York. And I said, well, you probably heard me when I was on the radio in that part of New York years ago and worked in television too. And he said, nope. But if he's from Utica too, we have to have some sympathy. That's third world. It really is. But I share that because Rob has moved on. He's the editor now at a publication that's run by the Heritage Foundation called The Daily Signal. And I talked to him a couple of months ago, and we were sharing some stories. Our dads grew up about an hour apart, both in small towns in Pennsylvania, which have been hollowed out by the Obama economy, and how we had a discussion about how sad all of this is, and how can we turn this around? But I want to share something from Rob in a couple of minutes on the program with you. He was one of those conservative leaders who met with the the folks at Facebook yesterday about the so-called suppression of conservatives and conservative news on Facebook. And I've got my own thoughts about that too, but as I say, I'll share that in a moment. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Good morning. I'd like to comment about your previous conversation there about the United Nations. You know, the United Nations was formed with the idea that everybody was going to be a peace and brotherhood, but it's been a war organization. It's had war against Christians. It's had war against people that want freedom, and it's been run by socialists and communists from its very inception. And so Alger Hiss, of course, was the first Secretary General and was convicted as a communist spy. So now they run the refugee program. They bring down the education, Common Core, you name the program, and the Agenda 21 that's raising our utility costs. It just, through the EPA, it goes on and on and on. So, folks, we've got to wake up to the fact that the UN is the framework for the one world utopian socialist tyrannical world government. We're all going to be the little worker bees out there, and there's going to be a few elites that are going to think they're better than we are to run the planet, and we need to get out of the United Nations. And Ron Paul pushed that for a long time. There's other congressmen who now have H.R. 1205 to get out of the United Nations. It needs to be done to stop all of this tyranny that's coming from the top down, right through our State Department, through the agencies, right to our local level, and everybody complies because it's the thing to do or we lose the federal funds.
Right, and thank you for the call. And the thing to point out, too, is a lot of these people who are behind this globalist agenda, they don't think that they're evil. They think that it's the right thing to do. And as our caller pointed out, they think they're smarter than everybody else. And throughout history, people who've been allowed to get the levers of power, you think about Robespierre, who just started chopping off the heads of people who he didn't feel understood his vision, and the terror he brought to his country. Imagine that on a worldwide level. You're up next at 9:28. You're on Top Story on KLIX.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on voter turnout. I went home yesterday and looked at the Twin Falls webpage.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll bring up voter turnout at another point. I know that I am just so primaried out at this point. It's really our election day, because come election day, general election day this year, the Democrats are going to put up all of their weak sisters. And so our election day happened to be Tuesday. But my gosh, for 6 weeks I sat here and just day after day after day chatted with candidates and the like. And I'm just, at this point, I'm glad we can move on to something else. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Got to share this with you. My good friends at MontHarrisonAudiology.com and Rupert have been with us on the air, I think, for just about a year now. I'd have to double check with Dr. Pickup. She'd probably have a better idea how long it's been. But with advances in healthcare, people are living longer, healthier lives. And she'd like to remind you, cognitive decline continues to be a major concern. People with hearing loss have a much greater risk of developing cognitive decline, which can lead to dementia. The greater the loss, the greater the risk. Keeping your hearing healthy is an important part of overall wellness. Knowing your hearing status and doing something about it can lead to a better, healthier life as you age. Now is the time to schedule a hearing evaluation today. You can call Mont Harrison Audiology for an appointment. Again, in Rupert, they're at MontHarrisonAudiology.com, by the way, if you want to look them up online. But the telephone number, 208-312-0957. That phone number again, 208-312-0957. Bill Colley with you this morning. One more half hour of Top Story left on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Dropping like a stone when it comes to the temperature. We were at 65 earlier. We're at 60 now. Brr. You can thank the global warming. Coming up, Facebook is a privately held company which charges you nothing for its service. And yet people out there are saying Facebook needs to do a better job of representing conservatives. Maybe it does. I don't know, though, that it's government's business. We have some details on that coming up in just a few minutes. Right here on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com.